Fear is one of the most powerful emotions we experience as human beings. It's primal, deeply embedded in our DNA, and designed to protect us from harm. But while fear has its place, it keeps us from stepping too close to the edge of a cliff or touching a hot stove. It can also trap us. It can paralyze us, keep us small, and prevent us from living the life we are truly capable of. The problem isn't fear itself, it's letting fear dictate our choices and define our lives. If we want to grow, achieve, and live fully, we have to stop living in fear. The truth is, fear is sneaky. It disguises itself as practicality, as caution, as reason. It whispers in our ear, what if you fail? Or what will people think? It convinces us to stay in jobs we hate, relationships that no longer serve us, or routines that leave us unfulfilled. Fear tells us we're not good enough, not ready, or not capable. But here's the thing. Fear is a liar. It thrives on uncertainty and worst-case scenarios. But most of what we fear never actually happens. Fear magnifies our doubts, but it has no real power unless we give it power. Fear is a deeply ingrained emotion that has helped us survive for centuries. It's wired into our brains to alert us to danger and keep us safe from harm. But the problem with fear today is that it doesn't always differentiate between a real, immediate threat and an imagined one. It takes something as simple as stepping outside your comfort zone, trying something new, or pursuing a dream, and magnifies it into something overwhelming. The first step to stopping fear from running your life is to recognize it for what it truly is: a signal, not a certainty. Fear is not inherently bad. It's there to protect you. When you stand at the edge of a high cliff and your heart races, fear is doing its job. It's saying, be careful, don't get too close. But that same fear doesn't know the difference between real danger and perceived discomfort. It reacts to uncertainty and risk as if they are life-threatening. For example, when you think about speaking in front of a crowd or quitting a job that's making you miserable, your brain might respond with the same intensity as if you were standing on that cliff. But the fear in these situations isn't warning you about imminent danger, it's warning you about stepping into the unknown. And here's the truth: stepping into the unknown is often where the most meaningful growth happens. The challenge is that fear is sneaky. It doesn't always show up as a loud, obvious, don't do this. Instead, it whispers things that seem logical. What if this doesn't work out? What will people think of me? I'm not ready yet. These thoughts feel rational on the surface, but beneath them lies fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake those fears for facts. You'll let them dictate your decisions and hold you back from pursuing the things that truly matter to you. Recognizing fear for what it is requires self-awareness. It's about pausing and asking yourself, is this fear protecting me from something real, or is it just my brain trying to keep me comfortable? Comfort feels good, but it's not where growth happens. Comfort keeps you safe, but it also keeps you stuck. The key is to recognize when fear is keeping you small and then make a conscious choice to move forward anyway. Fear often feeds on uncertainty. When you're faced with an unknown outcome, your mind fills in the blanks with worst-case scenarios. But here's the thing. Most of those worst-case scenarios never come true. Your brain is just trying to prepare you for every possible negative outcome, but it doesn't mean those outcomes are likely or even realistic. The next time you feel fear creeping in, take a moment to challenge it. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? Then ask, what's the best that could happen? You might find the potential rewards far outweigh the risks. Another way to recognize and reframe fear is to look at it as a guide. Fear often points to what matters most to us. If you're afraid of failing at something, it's probably because you care deeply about succeeding. If you're afraid of speaking up, it's likely because your voice and perspective are important. Instead of letting fear stop you, use it as a signal. Let it guide you toward the areas where you have the most room to grow and the most potential to make an impact. It's also important to understand that fear isn't something you conquer once and for all. It's not a one-time battle. Fear is a part of being human, and it will show up every time you step into something new or challenging. The goal isn't to eliminate fear, but to recognize it, understand it, and move forward in spite of it. The more you practice doing this, the less power fear will have over you. It's like building a muscle. Every time you act in the face of fear, you're strengthening your courage and resilience. Recognizing fear for what it is doesn't mean ignoring it. It means listening to it, understanding its source, and deciding how much weight to give it. When you can do this, fear transforms from a roadblock into a stepping stone. It becomes a part of the process, not something that derails you. And most importantly, it loses its ability to control you. So the next time fear whispers in your ear, pause and listen. Ask yourself if it's protecting you from real harm or just holding you back from growth. Recognize it for what it is, a natural response, not a truth, and take that first step anyway. Fear will always be there, but it doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to limit you. Recognizing fear is the first step to reclaiming your power and choosing to live a life that isn't defined by limitations, but by possibilities. Fear grows in the dark. It thrives when we avoid it, ignore it, or let it sit in the background of our lives, silently dictating our choices. The more we avoid facing our fears, the more they take root, weaving themselves into our thoughts and decisions. Fear has a way of building walls around us, walls that convince us to stay safe, stay comfortable, stay small. But here's the truth. Fear only has power if we let it. When we shine a light on our fears, when we name them, question them, and challenge them, they lose their grip on us. Most of the time, fear is fueled by the unknown. It feeds on uncertainty and the stories we tell ourselves about what could go wrong. Think about it. When you're faced with a decision, your mind doesn't automatically jump to everything that could go right. It jumps to the risks, the potential failures, the embarrassment, the regret. Fear is like a magnifying glass for doubt. It amplifies the voice in your head that says, what if you fail? What if you're not good enough? What if you're making a mistake? But how often do we stop and ask, what if none of those things happen? What if I succeed? What if this works out better than I could have imagined? To challenge fear, we have to shift the narrative. It starts with recognizing that fear is not fact. Just because you're afraid of something doesn't mean it's true or inevitable. Fear is just your brain trying to protect you from potential pain or discomfort, but it doesn't have the whole story. When you feel fear creeping in, take a moment to dissect it. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? Be honest and specific. And then ask yourself, could I survive that? Could I recover? The answer, almost always, is yes. We are far more resilient than fear gives us credit for. But don't stop there. After you've looked at the worst case scenario, flip the script. Ask yourself, what's the best that could happen? Fear rarely lets us focus on this side of the equation, but it's just as important, if not more so. What if that big leap you're afraid of leads to incredible opportunities? What if that uncomfortable conversation strengthens your relationship? What if putting yourself out there opens doors you never even knew existed? When you focus on the potential upside, fear starts to lose its hold. It becomes less about avoiding risk and more about embracing possibility. There's another layer to challenging fear, and that's recognizing the lessons it can teach us. Fear isn't just a signal that something is risky. It's often a sign that something matters to us. If you're afraid of failing at a project, it's probably because you care deeply about its success. If you're afraid of speaking in front of a crowd, it's likely because your message is important to you. Fear highlights what's meaningful. It shows us where we have room to grow, where we have the potential to make an impact. Instead of seeing fear as an enemy, what if we saw it as a guide? What if we leaned into the areas that scare us, knowing that they're often the areas where the greatest growth happens? Challenging fear doesn't mean eliminating it. It's not about waiting until you're fearless to take action, because that moment may never come. Fear will always be a part of the equation, especially when you're stepping into the unknown or pushing beyond your comfort zone. The goal isn't to get rid of fear. It's to stop letting it control you. It's to say, I see you, I hear you, but you don't get to decide what I do next. This has been reported by many experts on the topic for years, and they say leaders have to know how to learn. One of the most effective ways to challenge fear is through action. Fear loves to keep us stuck in analysis paralysis, going over all the reasons we shouldn't take a risk. But when we take even the smallest step forward, we start to break fear's hold. Action creates momentum, and momentum builds confidence. Maybe it's having one conversation, sending one email, taking one small step toward that goal you've been putting off. Each step proves to yourself that you are capable, that you can face uncertainty, and come out stronger on the other side. The more you challenge your fears, the less power they have. They stop feeling like unmovable obstacles. and start feeling like opportunities for growth. They stop dictating your decisions and start becoming part of your story. Stories of courage, resilience, and transformation. Fear doesn't have to be the enemy. It can be the catalyst for a life that's bold, meaningful, and full of possibility. But it all starts with a choice: to question fear, to challenge it, and to take that first step anyway. Fear is a curious thing. It has this incredible ability to paralyze us, to stop us in our tracks and convince us to stay right where we are. But what if fear wasn't something to run away from? What if it was a signal, a guide, pointing us towards something we need to address, something we need to grow through? Reframing fear as a tool instead of a threat is one of the most powerful shifts we can make. It's not about pretending fear doesn't exist. It's about using it as a compass to navigate toward the things that truly matter. Let's think about fear for a moment. Most of the time, it shows up when we're about to step into the unknown. It's that voice in our head that says, what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if this doesn't work? But here's the thing. Fear rarely shows up for things that don't matter. You don't feel fear about things you don't care about. You don't feel fear about things that have no significance in your life. Fear arises precisely because you're about to do something that has weight, something that could change you, something that could push you closer to the life you want. In that sense, fear is an incredible indicator of where we need to focus our energy. The problem is that most of us misinterpret fear. We see it as a stop sign instead of a green light. We think, I'm scared, so I shouldn't do this. But fear isn't telling you to stop. It's telling you to pay attention. It's telling you that you're about to step into something meaningful, something that will stretch you. And that's where the magic happens. Growth doesn't come from staying in your comfort zone. It comes from leaning into the discomfort, embracing the uncertainty, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable. Reframing fear as a guide means asking yourself a very important question. What is this fear trying to teach me? For example, if you're afraid of speaking up in a meeting, what's behind that fear? Is it a fear of being judged? A fear of saying the wrong thing? A fear of being vulnerable? Now take that fear and flip it on its head. Instead of letting it stop you, use it as a guide. What would happen if you leaned into that fear? What if you spoke up, even though your voice might shake? You might discover that your ideas are valued, that your perspective is unique, that you have something important to contribute. And even if it doesn't go perfectly, you'll have taken a step forward. You'll have proven to yourself that you can face the fear and come out stronger. There's another aspect of reframing fear that's equally important, understanding that fear often points us toward the things we care about most. If you're afraid of failing at a project, it's likely because you're deeply invested in its success. If you're afraid of making a career change, it's probably because you want it to work so badly. Fear highlights our passions, our dreams, the things that matter most to us. And that's a gift. It's a reminder of what's truly important. It's a nudge to pay attention, to give those areas our energy and focus. But let's be honest, leaning into fear isn't easy. It requires courage, it requires vulnerability, and it requires a willingness to embrace the possibility of failure. But here's the thing, failure isn't the end. It's a step on the journey. Every time you face a fear and take action, you're building resilience. You're teaching yourself that you can handle the discomfort, the uncertainty, the risk. And with each step, fear starts to lose its grip. It stops feeling like a roadblock and starts feeling like an opportunity. Reframing fear doesn't mean you'll never feel afraid again. Fear will always be there, especially when you're doing something big, something bold, something meaningful. But when you learn to see fear as a guide instead of a threat, it stops controlling you. It becomes part of the process, part of the growth, part of the story you're writing. The next time fear shows up, don't run from it. Don't ignore it. Don't let it stop you. Instead, pause and ask yourself, what is this fear trying to tell me? Where is it guiding me? And then take that step forward. Because on the other side of fear is growth, and on the other side of growth is the life you've always wanted. Fear doesn't have to be the enemy. It can be the guide that leads you to everything you're capable of becoming. Fear thrives on isolation. It loves to grow in the shadows, to amplify its voice when we feel alone and disconnected. When we allow fear to corner us, it becomes a self-fulfilling cycle. We pull back, we shut down, and we convince ourselves that no one could possibly understand what we're going through. But here's the truth. Fear diminishes when shared. It loses its edge when we bring it into the light, when we talk about it openly, and when we allow others to stand alongside us in the moments we feel most vulnerable. Human beings are hardwired for connection. It's in our DNA. We're not meant to navigate life's challenges alone, and that includes the fear we carry. Yet so often we hold back. We're afraid that if we admit our fears to someone else, we'll be judged. We're afraid that exposing our vulnerability will make us look weak. But vulnerability is not a weakness, it's a strength. It takes courage to say, I'm scared. It takes courage to admit, I don't have all the answers. And it takes courage to ask for help, to let someone else into the space where fear resides. When we share our fears, something extraordinary happens. The weight of those fears begins to lift. What felt overwhelming in isolation becomes manageable when someone else says, I've been there too. There's a profound power in hearing someone say, you're not alone in this. It reminds us that fear is a universal experience, not a personal failing. It connects us to our shared humanity and builds a bridge between our struggles and the support we need. Think about a time when you opened up to someone about something that scared you. Maybe it was a friend, a family member, or a mentor. Remember how their response made you feel. Did they listen without judgment? Did they offer reassurance or guidance? Did they help you see your fear from a different perspective? Those moments are transformative because they remind us that we don't have to face fear on our own. They remind us that even in our darkest moments, there are people willing to walk alongside us. But sharing our fears isn't just about seeking comfort or support. It's also about accountability. When we voice our fears out loud, we take away some of their power. We name them, we define them, and in doing so, we begin to take control. Saying, I'm afraid of failing at this project, or I'm scared to take this next step, shifts the narrative. It's no longer a vague, undefined feeling. It becomes something tangible, something we can address. And when we share those fears with others, they can hold us accountable to move forward, even when it feels daunting. Sharing our fears also creates space for collaboration and innovation. How many times have you held back an idea or a question because you were afraid of how it might be received? Fear thrives in that silence. But when we choose to speak up, to share what's on our mind, even when it feels risky, we open the door for others to do the same. We create an environment where ideas flow freely, where creativity flourishes, and where fear no longer dictates what's possible. In those moments, fear shifts from being a barrier to being a catalyst for growth and connection. Of course, sharing our fears requires trust. It requires finding the right people, the ones who will hold space for our vulnerability without diminishing it. Not everyone deserves to hear our deepest fears, and that's okay. But when we do find those trusted individuals, those who listen, empathize, and encourage us, we build relationships that are unshakable. We create a network of support that helps us navigate not just fear, but life's challenges as a whole. So why is this so important? Because fear can only grow in the dark. When we bring it into the light, when we share it with others, it loses its grip on us. It becomes less about what we can't do and more about what we can overcome together. It shifts from being a source of isolation to being a pathway to connection, understanding, and growth. The next time fear tells you to stay silent, challenge it. Reach out to someone you trust. Share what you're feeling, even if your voice shakes. Ask for their perspective, their guidance, their support, because in doing so, you're not just lightening your own load, you're creating space for deeper connection, for mutual understanding, and for courage to grow. Fear doesn't stand a chance when we face it together. And when we invite others into the process, we unlock a strength that far exceeds anything we could ever find on our own. One of the most pervasive traps fear sets for us is convincing us to focus on the worst case scenario. It loves to paint vivid pictures of everything that could go wrong, every potential failure, every possible embarrassment. Fear whispers, what if it doesn't work? What if they laugh at you? What if you're not good enough? And so we get stuck, we hesitate, we hold back. But what if we change the question? What if, instead of asking what if it all goes wrong, we asked what if it all goes right? The mindset we bring to any situation has a profound impact on how we navigate it. Fear thrives on negativity and doubt, feeding off our tendency to anticipate disaster. But when we shift our perspective, we give ourselves permission to envision success instead of failure. This isn't about blind optimism or pretending challenges don't exist. It's about recognizing that there's another side to the story, one where the risks we take and the effort we put in lead to something extraordinary. Think about a time when you achieved something you were proud of. Maybe it was a project you completed, a goal you reached, or a challenge you overcame. How did you get there? Was it because you spent all your time imagining everything that could go wrong, or was it because at some point you decided to take a leap of faith and believe in the possibility of success? Focusing on what could go right doesn't mean you ignore potential obstacles. It means you allow hope and possibility to take up as much space as fear. When you start to visualize success, something shifts inside you. Your energy changes. Your confidence grows. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, you're motivated by the potential for something better. This shift doesn't just impact your mindset, it influences your actions. When you believe success is possible, you're more likely to take the steps necessary to achieve it. You're more willing to try, to experiment, to put yourself out there. And with every step forward, fear starts to shrink. The power of this mindset isn't just theoretical, it's backed by science. Studies have shown that people who focus on positive outcomes are more resilient, more innovative, and more likely to persevere in the face of challenges. Why? Because they're not stuck in a loop of doubt and hesitation. They're actively moving toward a vision of what's possible. They're fueled by hope instead of drained by fear. But let's be clear, shifting your mindset isn't always easy. Fear is persuasive, it's loud, and it often feels safer to prepare for the worst than to hope for the best. After all, if you don't expect much, you can't be disappointed, right? But that kind of thinking keeps you small. It keeps you from taking risks, from growing, from experiencing the full richness of life. The truth is, disappointment is a part of life. Sometimes things won't go as planned, but even in those moments, there's something to learn, something to gain, and if you never try, you'll never know what could have been. One of the most effective ways to shift your focus is to start asking better questions. Instead of, what if I fail, try asking, what's the best that could happen? Instead of, what if they don't like me, ask, what if I build an incredible connection? Instead of, what if I'm not good enough, ask, what if I discover I'm more capable than I ever imagined? These questions don't erase fear, but they reframe it. They remind you that fear isn't the only possibility. Hope, growth, and success are on the table too. This isn't just about personal success, it's about the ripple effect it creates. When you focus on what could go right, you inspire others to do the same. Your courage becomes contagious. People see you taking risks, embracing challenges, and pursuing your goals, and it gives them permission to do the same. By choosing to focus on the possibility of success, you're not just transforming your own life, you're creating a culture of optimism and action for those around you. Fear will always be a part of the equation. It's human nature to worry about the unknown, but you get to choose how much power you give it. You get to decide whether you'll let it control your actions or whether you'll use it as a reminder to dream bigger, to hope more boldly, to step into the possibilities that lie ahead. The question isn't whether fear will show up. It will. The question is whether you'll let it stop you or whether you'll let it push you toward everything that could go right. And when you make that choice, you'll discover just how powerful you really are. One of the greatest lies fear tells us is that we have no control. It convinces us that life is something that simply happens to us, that we're at the mercy of external forces, unable to influence the outcomes. But this isn't true. We have more power than we give ourselves credit for. We may not control every circumstance, but we do control how we respond, how we adapt, and how we move forward. Fear loves to strip us of that belief. It thrives on helplessness. The antidote? Taking ownership of what we can control. It begins with understanding that control is not about micromanaging or eliminating risk. Control is about choice. It's about choosing where to focus your energy, what to prioritize, and how to navigate the challenges you face. Fear will always try to dictate your choices, steering you toward avoidance, hesitation, or retreat. But you have the ability to pause, to evaluate, and to decide for yourself. That's the power of control, not over everything, but over the things that matter most. Consider the way fear affects our thoughts. It creates a loop of negativity, replaying worst-case scenarios, self-doubt, and insecurity. But we can choose which thoughts we allow to take root. We can challenge the negative narrative fear tries to sell us. I'm not good enough can be replaced with, I'm learning and growing. This will never work can shift to, what steps can I take to make this work? It's not about pretending fear doesn't exist. It's about refusing to let it dictate your mindset. The thoughts you nurture are the ones that will shape your actions. Choose wisely. Fear also loves to undermine our actions. It whispers, don't even try, what's the point? And so we procrastinate, we delay, we avoid. But action is one of the most powerful ways to reclaim control. When we act, when we take even the smallest step forward, we disrupt fear's narrative. We prove to ourselves that we're capable, that we're resourceful, and that we're not as helpless as fear wants us to believe. Momentum is built one decision at a time, one action at a time. And with each step, fear loses its grip. But reclaiming control isn't just about what we do, it's about how we prepare. Fear often stems from the unknown, from feeling unprepared or caught off guard. While we can't predict every outcome, we can equip ourselves to handle what comes our way. That means developing skills, seeking knowledge, and building a foundation of resilience. Preparation doesn't eliminate fear, but it strengthens our ability to face it. It reminds us that we have tools, resources, and the capacity to adapt. Equally important is recognizing what we can't control and letting it go. Fear loves to keep us fixated on the what-ifs that are beyond our influence. What if they don't like me? What if the market shifts? What if things don't go as planned? These questions are endless and they're exhausting. The truth is, we can't control other people's opinions, external events, or the twists and turns life takes. What we can control is how we show up, how we respond, and what we choose to focus on. Letting go of what's beyond our control isn't giving up. It's freeing ourselves to invest our energy where it can actually make a difference. This idea of control isn't just about overcoming fear. It's about reclaiming agency in our lives. When we take ownership of our thoughts, our actions, and our responses, we step into a place of empowerment. We stop waiting for the perfect moment for external validation or for circumstances to align in our favor. Instead, we create our own momentum. We choose progress over perfection, action over hesitation, and courage over complacency. The beauty of this mindset is that it's contagious. When you reclaim control, you inspire others to do the same. People notice when someone moves through life with clarity, focus, and purpose. They see the way you navigate fear, not by avoiding it, but by confronting it with intention and grace. Your example becomes a beacon for others, a reminder that fear doesn't have to be the loudest voice in the room. Fear's greatest power is convincing us that we're powerless. But every time we make a choice, every time we challenge a thought, take a step, or let go of what's beyond our control, we prove fear wrong. We remind ourselves that we're capable, resilient, and resourceful. Fear may always be present, but it doesn't have to dictate our lives. When we take ownership of what we can control, we take back our power. And that's when we truly begin to thrive. Fear is a part of life. It always has been, and it always will be. But the question isn't about eliminating fear. It's about deciding how much influence we allow it to have over our choices, our dreams, and the direction of our lives. Fear's goal is to paralyze us, to keep us small, to make us doubt our strength and resilience. But when we learn to confront it, challenge it, and reframe it, we begin to reclaim the control we thought we lost. The truth is, we're not powerless in the face of fear. We have the ability to choose our thoughts, to act despite hesitation, and to focus on what truly matters. Fear may try to tell us we're not enough or that failure is inevitable, but it's our response that defines the outcome. By focusing on hope, preparation, and the things within our control, we shift the narrative. We take fear's power and use it as fuel to grow, to try, and to step forward with courage. This isn't just about pushing fear aside, it's about realizing that courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. Courage means taking action in spite of it. It's about showing up even when the road ahead feels uncertain. And with every step we take, we not only quiet fear, but also inspire those around us to do the same. When we stop letting fear dictate our lives, we open the door to possibility, growth, and the extraordinary life that's waiting for us on the other side. The journey starts with a choice, one that only we can make.